2Samuel 13. This was the story of Amnon and Tamar, David's children. There was Amnon. Tamar was Amnon's stepsister. So in verse 1, in the course of time, Amnon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, son of David. Amnon became so obsessed with his sister, Tamar, that he made himself sick. She was a virgin, and it seemed impossible for him to do anything to her. So the story goes on. The stepbrother was, the word here says in love, but was lusting after his stepsister. He wanted to sleep with her. And then he had this friend, an advisor named Jonadab, who was the son of David's brother. And that one advised him, hey, pretend you're ill and ask your sister to be sent to give you food in your room. And so he did that. He asked for his sister to be sent to him. He sent everyone out of the room, and then he raped his sister. And then sent her away. Based on the customs then, she ended up being married for the rest of her life. Because, no one would marry someone who was not a virgin. So he basically wrecked her life because of his lust, because he couldn't control his passions. He allowed his lust to get a better part of him. A few things from that story. One is the need for sex education in our homes. We have to be aware. Incest between siblings. We have to be aware, even from when kids are at a young age. We have to educate them what is acceptable play and what is not. So this guy, was basically lusting after this beautiful stepsister of his, and unfortunately, he had a bad friend who advised him to go ahead and plot to sleep with her. Who are you surrounding yourself with? I wish he had a friend who would have talked the nonsense out of him and would have talked sense into him. But no, he had a bad friend. So the people who surround ourselves matter a lot, because there'll be times in our lives where weird thoughts come to us, silly thoughts come to us, want to do things that are out of our character. And we need the right people in those situations to bring us back on track and in line. And also for the lady Tamar, right? Tamar, I guess she was also very trusting of this brother of ours. She wasn't environmentally aware, like at the point where, the guy sent everyone else out. Like, why is that necessary? Why do you need to send everyone out for you to eat? And why should I be in the room alone with you? So there's need for that as well, to be cautious. And this guy basically gave in to his lust. He didn't think about the consequences. All he cared about at that point in time was, hey, I want to have her. And as soon as he did, he hated her. He didn't want to have anything to do with her. He threw her out. I had no concern or care for, the impact of his action on this lady. He was just a selfish guy. And he ended up ruining his life as well as a result of that. And then when we go to, let's see, in verse 19. So Tamar put ashes on her head and tore the ornate robe she was wearing. She was wearing a, ornate, delicate robe that virgins wore. She put her hands on her head and went away weeping aloud as she went. Yeah, very sad story. And we see in verse 21, David heard about it. When King David heard all this, he was furious. But that's all it says. We don't see what action David took when he heard about this. Did he correct? Did he punish Amnon for doing this to his sister? Like what? So we don't see any action there. And then verse 22 says, and Absalom, who was Tamar's brother, never said a word to Amnon, either good or bad. He hated Amnon because he had disgraced his sister Tamar. So Tamar, our own brother, Absalom, yeah, he was furious about this, and he became bitter against his brother. And from that day on, he was plotting how he was plotting his revenge. And here is, so a lesson here is one, and then when we go on to later verses, Absalom actually kills Amnon. That got me wondering, if David had done something, if he had corrected the situation, if he had punished, the offender, would he have prevented his other son Absalom from taking matters into his own hands and killing his stepbrother? It looks like David failed in his parenting in this situation, and he just swept it under the carpet, and that allowed that bitterness to brew within his home. And he ended up losing 2 of his sons, because one was killed, the other one had to run away after killing his brother. And another lesson is, Absalom, don't allow the root of bitterness to grow within. He kept pondering over and over what this guy had done to his sister, and he, decided to kill the stepbrother, which was not a wise action on his own as well. And then when we go on to 2 Samuel 14, this is when Absalom returns to Jerusalem. So he had run away, gone into exile because he had just killed his brother and all that. And then David was missing him. David's commander pleaded with David to have him brought back to the city and all of that. And then when we look at verse 25, it says, in all Israel, there was not a man so highly praised for his handsome appearance as Absalom. From the top of his head to the sole of his foot, there was no blemish in him. Yeah, fine guy, but no character. Yeah. So, yeah, it's not enough to be fine. We have to be people of integrity, of character, of values, not given to anger. This man, Absalom, as handsome as he was a man of character. He allowed his anger get the best of him, and he ruined his life as a result as well. Moving on to verse 27, we see where Absalom had 3 sons and a daughter were born to him. His daughter's name was Tamar, and she became a beautiful woman. He named his daughter after his sister Tamar that had been raped, and it showed how much he loved his sister. Maybe that's what moved him to taking matters into his own hands and, killing someone else for the sister, because he loved her so much. Yeah, that was quite sad, right? And then in verse 29 to 32. So at this point in time, he had still not seen David. David allowed him back, into the city, but he wasn't allowed near where David was. And he got tired and was like, I need to see David. Am I not going to see him? Like, why am I here? So Absalom lived 2 years in Jerusalem without seeing the king's face. Then Absalom sent for Joab in order to send him to the king, but Joab refused to come to him. So he sent a second time, but refused to come. Then he said to his servants, look, Joab's field is next to mine, and he has barley there. Go and set it on fire. So Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Like, what an entitled young man this guy was. Excuse me. This was the same Joab that asked for David to allow him come back. He had the audacity to go set his field on fire because, hey, the guy wasn't listening to him or coming to him. Well, I guess he was frustrated, but I don't know. Was that the best thing to do? Hey, again, the guy was just an angry guy. And then it's like, Yeah. And then, Joab was like, why did you set my field on fire? And he's like, look, I sent word to you and said, come here so I can send you to the king. Why have I come from Geshur? It would be better for me if I was still there. Now then, I want to see the king's face, and if I'm guilty of anything, let him put me to death. Now he's demanding to see the king's face. Right? He's demanding to see the king's face. And it's like, if I'm guilty of anything, like, guy, are you serious? Are you being serious right now? You just killed your stepbrother. Yeah, yes, you are guilty. You are terribly guilty. And you just go and be quiet somewhere and live your life and be grateful to be alive. But no, this guy was entitled, really, really entitled young brat he was. Yeah, interesting, right? Yeah, I don't know what this says about David's parenting, but you know, as we study the Bible, what I want us to do is to reflect. How are we doing in our own lives? What lessons can we take? How can we be better parents? How can we be better people? And how can we make sure we don't repeat the same mistakes we see in the Bible in these stories? That was those were my key takeaway from this two passages, two chapters, 2 Samuel 13 to 14. Was there something else you saw that caught your attention, that intrigued you, or an insight or revelation or something you learned, a lesson? Yeah, do share in the comments. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye bye.